Welcome back to the Rob and Steve Show, where we got a couple of CEOs just breaking down perspective on everyday topics. And today we're going to talk about content because we have had this experience of launching together and separately 3 independent YouTube channels. We've done stuff on IG, we've done stuff on LinkedIn, and I think there's some lessons that we've learned, but we're going to talk about this in hopefully a structured way. First, I think we go through just some of the embarrassing things that we've done making content, and there's a lot of those, so we'll just try to pick a couple. But mostly I want to spend time on what are the lessons that we've actually learned in making content. And you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end because we're going to talk about if we were launching from the beginning, brand new content channel, what would we do to get that channel off to the right start? And so if you're thinking about making content, that's definitely something you're going to want to stick around for. So first and foremost, let's dive into the embarrassing things that we've done.
There have been many
in making content
things that we've done.
Yeah. Yes, there have.
I just want to frame, like, my content journey is a year in.
Okay.
How far are you into your content journey?
If we're talking about video content journey,
yeah,
less than 6 months.
Okay.
I've been making content on other platforms like LinkedIn, text-based content. That goes back probably about 5 years.
Okay.
So I learned a lot of lessons from that, not necessarily applicable to the video content world that we're in today, but it was a starting point.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
My first LinkedIn post was October of 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe 15 months ago.
Yeah.
My first video post where I posted a reel or posted a video on LinkedIn came around January 1st of 2024.
Okay.
So
okay.
I'm about 12 months into the content journey, but I went all in on the content journey of saying, I want to build a personal brand. I want to build a platform. I want to learn this stuff. And I don't mind failing publicly in front of people and doing embarrassing things.
Yeah.
And I've been successful at doing those things publicly in front of people. And I've learned a lot.
For some people, that is the best way that you do learn, right? Putting yourself out there
just
in front of the world.
The ditch
Yeah.
and figuring it out when you're in there.
Yeah.
And not being embarrassed about what anyone thinks of you because of what you're saying and what you're doing, because I'm learning right now.
Yeah.
Say what you about my content, I'm learning about it. If it sucks, I'm getting
practice
better.
And you get better. I think one of the case in points of some of the cringiest things that we've done, certainly embarrassing, if we're just getting raw here, is a show that we started just a couple of months ago. Identically Opposed.
Identically opposed. 2 identical twins.
Yeah.
Who grew up in the same house, share the same embryo, but yet view the world so differently every topic.
So
we
different.
Disagreed on every single topic. That's the premise what we came into, thinking we're going to make a debate show, topic on any issue, politics, religion, aliens, business, all across the board.
Absolutely.
We don't see eye to eye on those issues. But what did we find out?
Turns out we agree on more than we disagree on. There was
much opposed.
Yeah, there was a couple of things. I think if we actually had come into that and we had firm stances that we were ready to take, then it would have worked. But the problem is we're both rational. And so as we're actually talking through this, we were finding a lot more middle ground than we were finding opposition.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. There were the very polarizing topics we talked about. We went into politics. Me being a conservative-ish Republican, but more like middle ground, where I can kind of see a lot of the moderate left points of view. You being kind of the exact opposite. The spectrum is this big, but we were debating here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, that is a good point. You know, I'm not against term limits.
Yeah,
you
right.
Know? Like I don't have an issue with that. But that doesn't really make the opposing style of debate content that we hoped that it would.
Yeah.
And so we started to ask that question of like, what would be better?
Right.
But that was embarrassing across the board. And like I've had another podcast where I'm figuring it out, learning to be a good interviewer. And I didn't take a course on how to do that. I just decided to jump in. And I love having conversations. So being an inquisitive mind, that's not been a huge learning curve. The big learning curve, and what's been the most embarrassing, is the distribution of that content and not knowing how to get what I think is good content out to the world for them to see. Yeah. Because you got to make good titles and thumbnails and have a plan to get stuff in front of people and know when to make the episode interesting so that they stick around for the best part of the episode.
See, making the episode interesting is like for me, that leads me to my embarrassing moment. Because as you know, I started a channel, Faith in Question, on YouTube, where I was going to talk about my journey in religion, from going to Bible college to where I am today, questioning all sorts of things. And the first episode that I made, I had a really interesting topic where I was going to talk about a part of Genesis that repeats itself 3 different times and doesn't make a lot of sense. But I didn't get to that right away. I didn't have an understanding of what a hook was. So I introduced the podcast and what it was going to be about. And I spent about 15 minutes just rambling on. And what was so cringy for me and embarrassing was to actually go into the YouTube analytics after that video posted, and nobody stuck around to actually see what I wanted them to see. And you just see that drop off of when I'm just talking about stuff that I think is interesting and my journey, and just losing viewers. And then I finally got to the part of the show that was like, hey, here's what you came to see. Here's what was in the title and the thumbnail. And there's nobody left.
Yeah.
It's like 10% of people stuck around, and I probably know all of them.
I'll tell you, the most embarrassing thing for a new content creator is getting past the fact of not what you post that people see. It's what your editor is going to see of you when you're cussing yourself out because you can't get it. I remember the very first time that I was sitting down to make some content.
Yeah.
I had just gotten all my video equipment. I was super excited about it. I'm going to go build this personal brand. And I stood there staring at the camera. My mouth dried up under the lights. I started sweating, and it's just me and the camera in the room, and I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's like, well, where do I start?
Yeah.
So I bought a teleprompter, and I started getting in ChatGPT and writing stuff down. And that's not a great solution because you lose all authenticity. You've got to have a message to say. And it was embarrassing because I would just stare at the camera, and I would start, and I'd go back and do it again. And I'd talk for 3 minutes, and I'd say, okay, now I know what I want to say. I'm going to go back and do it again. And the editor is seeing all of that.
Yeah.
You should have seen the first online course I put together, the crap that I gave the editing team. One of them sitting right over there.
Yeah.
Who saw me standing here trying to figure it out. What turned into a 2-hour course was probably 8 hours of me just fumbling over my words, not knowing what I wanted to get out. Now, by the grace of God and that team, that they put together a wonderful course that I think has helped a lot of people out. But it's so embarrassing to get past the fact that, okay, like, they're going to lose all respect for me when they see it. And then there's the people that see the content who lose respect for you because you just aren't good at it yet.
Right.
But if you can get past that, where you say, I don't care what you think about me. I'm trying to better myself so that I can have a bigger platform to better a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
That's where the key is in all of this. You get past those embarrassing moments.
Anybody who's making content has had that moment. And maybe that leads us into the lessons that we've learned. Because if you're actually watching other people's content on YouTube or some other place, now you know, oh, they probably had like 10 takes to get this right on every single line that they're saying.
Yeah.
You know what goes into actually making it look decent. The mistakes, you know, a lot of people post their bloopers, like, just to put it out there and show people, like, this is, you can have fun with it, but it's difficult. And when you put a camera right in front of your face, all of a sudden your brain turns off.
Yeah. Every motion becomes like, should I put my hand here? Do I put it here? How does one act natural again? You start to ask yourself crazy questions like that when you start to make content.
Yeah.
Because most people who start to make content have never really been in front of a camera before.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to know what that feels like until you do it for the first time.
Yeah.
Especially when there's somebody else behind that camera. It's one thing if you're in a room by yourself.
Yeah.
You can figure it out. You can delete the takes that you don't want anyone to see.
Yeah.
When there's someone else that's there, it adds an element to it. And that's the journey. So for someone that wants to make content, just know it's going to hit a little bit different. And one of those lessons learned is that you have to stop giving a damn what anybody thinks about you, the person behind the camera, the person that views the content, what your mom's going to think when she sees it, what your dad's going to think when he sees it. I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to get there. I also think that, you know, when we were getting started, we spent a bunch of money on equipment.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate. You've got a great setup here in the studio. Like, this is, it's awesome to be able to sit in a studio with great equipment and make content. But the content is so much more important than the quality of the equipment that you have.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and spend $5,000 or $15,000 on equipment if you actually have something interesting to say. And I think we've kind of learned lessons on, okay, starting with a little bit of thought in mind in terms of who's going to actually watch this? How am I going to get people to click on this in the first place? and then building content off of that versus just
Yeah.
having a great production.
I think one of the things I learned the most after the equipment piece of it, the thing that I learned the most about content in 2024 was how to write and deliver a good hook.
Okay.
The first 10 seconds, doesn't matter if it's a YouTube video or a reel, and I failed at this over and over and over again, but 2 seconds in, you can see the drop off of how many people stayed. And it's not just what you say, it's what else happens on the screen. We talk about the visual hook now in my business of what's the visual hook? What's the text hook?
Yeah.
And then what is the verbal hook that we're giving? You got to have all three of those. And then people talk about a caption hook in there too, of giving people 4 reasons to stick around for a video.
Yeah.
If you don't do the hook well and entice someone in there, you fail. But then I learned on the back end of that, you can have an amazing hook. If you then go into some type of a long intro, you can lose people so quickly because the hook might say, oh, that's interesting. You got me to stop. What gets the person to stay? And I think the next part of that is an intriguing intro that builds on the hook that says, here's what we're going to cover. And at the end of this, you, the person I'm talking to who fits this category, are going to get this result on the back end of it.
Yeah.
This is why you don't leave.
Yeah.
I never knew that. And I spent a year making content that didn't hook people effectively and then never gave them a reason to stay once they were hooked to come into that. And it's one of the things that I'm fixing in 2025.
Yeah. Once you've given people a reason to stay, you have to find good opportunities to allow them to engage. Like if I say you should be liking this content right now and subscribing to this channel for more content just like this, finding places to build that in around the interesting parts of your content. Let me tell you the most, or probably the biggest lesson that I learned. Biggest lesson I've learned when making content and launching a new channel. Your friends and family, they do not give a shit about your YouTube channel. They don't give a shit. They don't care. Trying to send your content out to them to try to get a few views early on after you've posted it, the lesson I've learned now is you're now screwing up the algorithm. YouTube is set up in a way to send your content to people who are interested in what you have to say. But if you send a bunch of random people from Facebook to your content to go view it, and they don't act like the people who should be interested in your content, and they won't because they're not interested in your content, then you just mess the algorithm up. You're not giving the algorithm a chance to do its thing. You're getting in the way of your content. When I learned this, my mind was kind of blown.
I will tell you, this is one of the number one things I learned in 2024 about content. Good content doesn't need an engagement group. It doesn't need to be sent out to friends and family to get likes on it.
Yeah.
To all of your points about how they're not authentic users coming in, you get into an engagement group and you got 100 people and you post your reel in there and they all go in and they like it. Well, they're not watching it.
Yeah.
They weren't rewatching it. And
Yeah.
what the algorithm is looking at is watch time and who watched it a second time and a third time, or who paused it and went back to those areas.
Or who comes back for another video.
Who comes back for more videos? Who's really interested in the content? Who's following you based on that content? And so you mess it up by having your friends come in and just like it really quick because YouTube knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Facebook knows what's going on. You don't have to do that anymore. Just make better content.
Yeah.
None of your friends and family need to know that you have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I learned that lesson.
Yeah.
We learned that lesson.
YouTube will do it for you if you let them. So that leads me into, if we're going to be launching a new channel, right? What should we do from the beginning, right? What should other people do who are thinking about starting a new channel? What's that going to look like? Based on all the lessons that we've learned, what do you do differently? And I think I would start with, I wouldn't just post one video. You record one video, you post that video, and let's see how it does. The way that the algorithm works, especially in 2025, the algorithm is now designed to look at your viewers and how do you keep people watching your content on your channel. When they watch one video, do they then go look for another video of content that you've made? If you put a thumbnail up at the end, do they click on that and want to hear more from you? How do you do that if you only have one video out there? Lesson that I've learned, and if we're starting over again, 4 or 5 pieces of content launch on the same day when you launch a new channel.
Are you talking shorts? You talking long form?
I'm talking about at least 4 or 5 pieces of content, not shorts, clips or long form, that people can go, if they're enjoying one clip, they can go on to the next clip and on to the next clip. And you can, for people who actually enjoy that first episode, they stick with you for 2 or 3 more videos. That shows the algorithm who is interested in your content and who isn't. And so you already get a head start if you're going to be posting weekly on, they know who to push this content out to because they've already seen the activity of people who like your content. If you start with just one video, it's going to take time. You're going to sit there for a month or two posting a video a week while they figure out, oh, who actually likes this and who doesn't, when you could have shown them on day one. That's a big lesson.
Well, I think a lot of people have this whole ideal of, I'll make one video and then I'll see how it does, and I will decide whether or not I continue my content creation journey after that one video.
Yeah.
Which is a fallacy. Like, commit to learning how to create good content. You're going to suck at it for a year. We still suck. I'm a year in. I'm terrible at this thing still.
Yeah.
I've had a few videos that go, but not the ones I wanted to, not furthering the ends I wanted to when I started making content, because it's something you have to commit to and get passionate about and just get better at it every day. There is nothing that you can do 100 times that you don't get way better at the 100th than it was the first time that you did it.
Yeah. Oh,
That's true in anything in life, but particularly when you are looking at the data from the videos that you post, the first one you do and you're realizing, man, I was really boring. I wouldn't want to watch that video.
Right.
By the 100th one, because you're optimizing for the same things the algorithm is optimizing for, because you have to if you want to be successful, you get kind of good at it.
Yeah.
You're not great.
Yeah.
And maybe great comes at 10,000 videos.
Yeah.
Whatever the Mr. Beast style is, that's greatness. We all know what that looks like. It takes a long time to learn how to get there and to deliver on that consistently.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It is. But if you understand what the algorithm is doing, the important thing for you is make sure you pick a lane, right? The mistake we also made with Identically Opposed when we launched that, we didn't know what this show was going to be about.
Yeah, politics one day, religion.
We're talking about,
do you believe in God?
Nutrition, body changes, all kinds of stuff. Then we're having a DEI conversation. You don't know, the algorithm doesn't know what the show is about and doesn't know who to push this out to. So if you pick a lane and say, this is the topics I'm going to cover, you're going to have that video that does really well. It's going to go viral, but it'll go viral in your lane. You'll pick up subscribers who are interested in what you're doing and not, we're having a random show with a bunch of varieties and something goes viral about Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
And who cares? Because next week we're talking about DEI.
Yeah. You will never serve that subscriber ever again. They're coming in for Luigi Mangione. And so another lesson that was learned of the things that we would do better going forward. One thing to consider for anyone who wants to make content, one of the things that we really learned that we will do on this channel is learning how to build a machine. Because you want to schedule your content out in advance. But to do that, you also have to be thinking about all that goes into it. The thumbnails and the titles. There's nothing more important than those two on YouTube.
Yeah.
It took me too long to figure that piece out. And so for the team that's working with us to be optimizing, what do those titles look like? How do you A/B test those? You can upload 3 thumbnails. Anyone who's not uploading 3 thumbnails is not going to get the best click-through rate that they could, because YouTube will figure it out for you. I learned that this week.
Yeah.
This week we just started posting 3 thumbnails in every single video. So it's just constantly being in the trench and figuring it out. And once you get yourself to a point that you're 75% of the way there, the things you can complain about and focus on now is, okay, let's do 3 thumbnails. Let's add an AI automation to change the title in the first hour to make sure we're getting the maximum click-through rates.
Yeah.
Because if nobody sees your content, no one clicks on your content, you can't have that platform. You cannot impact those people.
Yeah.
And I talk about building a machine. When you talk about all the shorts that come from it, 7 different platforms from LinkedIn to Snapchat to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you're going to serve all those platforms, you got to be thinking about what people are looking for on each of those platforms.
Yeah.
And it's very different. What works on Twitter is not going to work on LinkedIn and vice versa. So thinking through all of that to be able to service that and not just say, hey, we have a podcast, every clip goes on every platform.
Yeah.
That's what is easy to do. So everyone does that. And we've done that too. But you have to serve each platform differently and get infotainment where you need infotainment on TikTok and Instagram.
Yeah.
The more business sided focused stuff on LinkedIn, Twitter, and then YouTube, making really engaging videos that are long form. People get to kind of know and like and trust you in that format too. Lessons still being learned every single day.
Yeah, 100%. But if we're, wrapping this up, I think probably the biggest takeaway and what we put forward into what we want this channel to be is we thought about what are the things we want to be talking about 5 years from now. Are we passionate about that? Are we knowledgeable about these topics? Can we provide value in these topics? And I think once we got pretty clear on that, it was really easy for us to figure out, like, what do we make this show about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I go with the Jeff Bezos approach to starting a business. He always says, you cannot plan on the things you don't know. Plan on the things you do know. So famously, he gave that speech about Amazon. And the things I know for sure, people will want two things. They're going to want super low prices and they're going to want super fast shipping. You can build an entire business around those two things.
Yeah.
Hence Amazon.
Yeah.
So you go beyond that and say, okay, what are the things I know for sure that I'll be able to add value for people 10 years from now? What am I digging into every single day? What am I reading about? What am I learning about? We're both CEOs of different businesses, in some cases, multiple businesses. And we're learning things to make those businesses stronger. We can share that expertise, but also talk about topics that are tangential to that and bring in experiences of things I'm working on right now in the business. And be able to sharpshoot each other's business ideas and to turn them into more scalable ideas too. So one of the things we want to do on this show is have people come in with business ideas. It might just be a hobby. It might be something that you're thinking about doing. Okay, how does that business scale up to $30 million? Let's have the conversation around that. What would have to be true? That's what I want this podcast and this show to be about.
CEO insight right there. So look, if we're wrapping this up, I think for anyone who's thinking about this, right, you don't really have to wait. If you're going to be in the content game, you do have to get started. But a little bit of planning goes into actually making something work, right? Plan the work, work the plan. There's a CEO quote for you right there.
There we go. I like
it. But look, we want to know what you guys think about this. And some of you are really good at content, way better than us. So leave some notes in the comments. Let's help people out. People who want to get into the content game. What did we miss? What did we hit on? Leave us a note in the comments. We'll be looking for them there.